Alright, it's time to dig into another batch of questions submitted by you, the audience. As always, if you have a question you'd like answered, leave it in the comment section down below and I will get to it in a future video. As a reminder, I've recently changed how I'm doing these Q&A videos, to make sure I can answer more of your questions in less time, by releasing a series of shorter Q&A videos that can come out more often instead of just releasing a few hour-long Q&A videos a couple times a year. If you want the exact details, watch the first few minutes of the 9th Q&A video, which I'll link to at the end of this one. Also, I just wanted to thank everyone in the comments for being so understanding and supportive of these changes. Some of you even went the extra mile and resubmitted your questions in a way that better fits this new format, which I never expected anyone to do, but I really appreciate it. So let's jump right in. Cat Lawyer Will Defend for Treats says, I like that there are so many cores, but I do wish there were different objects for different lights. It would be cool if someone had a staff, a belt, or a crown. What objects would you pick for each lantern core? I think it would make a lot of sense for someone to be able to channel emotional power through an object of great emotional importance to them specifically. Maybe it's a book that inspired you to be a better person, or your grandfather's pocket watch, something with a strong connection to a particular emotion. What's ironic is that the only time this has actually happened in the comics is when it had absolutely nothing to do with the emotional spectrum. The New 52 Earth 2 version of Alan Scott needed to choose an object to focus the power of the Emerald Flame, and it had to be something close to his heart, so he chose the ring he used to propose to his boyfriend Sam, who died in the train crash. So every time Alan uses his power to save the world, he's honoring his lost love. Caesar of Rome wants to know, what emotion fits Alan and his kids the best? After everything that Obsidian has been through, he would be hope. Todd has suffered an immense amount of mental and emotional trauma and come out of it committed to being the best version of himself. It's inspiring, and I can't imagine another ring fitting him more. Although it's worth mentioning that because he's powered by the Shadowlands, a dimension of darkness and nightmares, he should also have a pretty strong connection to fear. I could see Jade being a good fit for Rage. It doesn't take that much to get her angry, and considering everything she's lost over the years, on top of her unresolved feelings about her mother, yeah, probably Rage. Alan would have to be willpower. He's spent decades fighting to keep the Starheart in check with nothing but the sheer force of his own will. It hasn't always worked out, but I doubt anyone on Earth could do a better job of it, other than maybe his daughter. King of the Abyss says, as someone who's a big fan of pre-crisis Supergirl, do you think her Red Lantern Arc would work better if her anger came from the fact that no one remembers her dying at the hands of the Anti-Monitor, and her arguably most successful attempt at life on Earth being stolen from her? Right now, DC is taking a very broad approach to dealing with continuity. Everything that ever happened is on the table, and it seems to be left to individual writers to interpret what that means. And if that's the case, then yeah, Supergirl is an even better fit for the Red Lanterns than she was before, and not just because of her death in the first crisis. Her pre-crisis origin had her showing up on Earth all excited to live with her cousin and help him fight crime, and he immediately sent her to live in an orphanage and hid her existence from the world. There was actually a recent issue of World's Finest that did reference that part of her history, so who knows what else might come bubbling up to the surface the next time Kara has a bad day. Beep Boop Games says, pick 5 people from the Star Wars universe to get lantern rings. Marva Andor would be a Green Lantern. She was a rebel to her last breath and kept fighting after she was gone. Grand Admiral Thrawn would be a Yellow Lantern. He's like a calmer version of Sinestro. Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, would be an Indigo Lantern. He sacrificed everything about his way of life just to help a random child. If that isn't compassion, I don't know what is. Rey would be a Yellow Lantern. She spent most of her life standing still, letting fear rule her actions, and was too afraid to admit that her parents were never coming back to get her. Captain Rex would be a Star Sapphire. The rest of the clones are his family, and he would do anything to protect them and see to it that they live happy and fulfilling lives. Sandramat wants to know, have you read the JMD Matas run on Hal's time as the Spectre? If so, what do you think? I read 1 or 2 issues back when it was coming out, but that's it. What's funny is that this is exactly the kind of book that would be right up my alley now, but back in the early 2000s, I was way more interested in big, bombastic super fights than I was in deep philosophical explorations of human nature. I actually bought issue 19 solely because I wanted to see an epic battle between the Spectre and Darkseid, two cosmic titans going all out, and was disappointed when it turned out to be a meditation on the nature of good and evil. It didn't help that at the time I didn't have any strong ties to either Hal Jordan or the Spectre, so to me it felt like a Green Lantern spin-off that didn't have much Green Lantern stuff in it. Looking back, I see how wrong I was, and I love to give the entire series an honest shot, though it'd certainly help if DC would actually collect this run, which they never have. Tevya Smokal wants to know, since Wally West has 3 kids now, do you think it's time for any of the Green Lanterns to become parents as well? I think there is exactly one human Green Lantern who's actually ready and able to settle down, be a parent, and actually do a good job of it. And it's Guy Gardner. When it comes to home life and relationships, all the other Earth Lanterns are a complete mess, and introducing a kid into the mix wouldn't make anything better. What makes Guy different is that he grew up in an abusive household, and he's incredibly motivated to be a better man than his father was. I think if Guy found out that he was going to be a dad, that would be the moment he finally checks his ego at the door and leaves the universe in the hands of his friends, who he knows can get the job done, because he's got something even more important to do now. Zaire Bassoon asks, can the White Lantern or Phantom Lantern or other versions of the prototype rings use the powers of emotional spectrum colors added after, or not typically part of the rainbow like gold and ultraviolet? Ultraviolet is actually a totally separate spectrum made up of repressed negative feelings like self-loathing and regret. It's not connected to the emotional spectrum, so none of those other rings should be able to tap into it. As for the Gold Lantern, we still don't know what that power is made of. It's possible that the gold light has its roots in the emotional spectrum as we know it, which would mean that the White Lantern ring or Phantom ring should theoretically be able to use it, but we won't know that until some writer actually nails down what the Gold Lantern power actually is. Wario Scapelli asks, we were teased a while back with a Justice Society Dark. Terrible name aside, are there any specific characters you'd like to see on the team? This is an odd question to think about, because the regular JSA already has a lot of DC's most powerful magical heroes. Alan Scott, Dr. Fate, the Spectre, the Thunderbolt, Shazam, and Black Adam. I'm tempted to just say that they should be the Justice Society Dark. Except that wouldn't really be any different from the normal Justice Society, so let's make it a little more interesting. It needs to be a supernatural team that's also recognizable as a spin-off of the JSA, meaning that it has to lean into the concept of legacy while also incorporating some Golden Age characters. I'd go with Obsidian, son of the Golden Age Green Lantern, who has power over shadows. Secret is a ghost girl who spent years as a member of Young Justice and was recently part of the big group of lost Golden Age sidekicks that were found by Stargirl and returned to the Justice Society. Crimson Avenger, a spirit of vengeance who's cursed to walk the earth and hunt down those who have taken the lives of innocent people. Tomcat, son of the Golden Age Wildcat, who transforms into a werepanther. And lastly, let's anchor this team with an actual Golden Age character who's been around since 1940. Shazam, aka Captain Marvel, aka the Captain, aka whatever the hell else you want to call him. He'd be an essential piece of the puzzle, since this team needs some muscle, and Billy is the kind of light and happy person who can balance out the rest of the group. Anthony Mans wants to know, how would you do a Green Lantern and Captain America fusion, villains included? I probably wouldn't do an amalgam-style Iron Lantern sort of thing. Instead, I think it would be more interesting to come up with a narrative reason for aspects of these mythologies to overlap. For example, it's 1944. In an effort to bring the war to an end, the brightest minds in the United States have been trying to unlock the secrets of an alien spacecraft that crashed in the middle of the California desert. The body of Abin Sur was recovered from the craft, along with his ring and battery. It didn't take them long to figure out that the battery imbues the ring with power, but anyone who tried to wear the ring would quickly succumb to intense physical and mental strain. As such, the military launched a highly specific recruitment program, looking for someone with the fortitude to endure the power of the ring. The only candidate who came close to measuring up was Steve Rogers. Mentally and emotionally he was ready, but his physical body needed a little help. Thankfully, the experimental super soldier program was looking for a test subject, so the army could kill two birds with one stone. Meanwhile, Sinestro has come to Earth looking for his old friend Abin Sur. When he realizes that the United States government is holding Abin's body, Sinestro decides to help the Axis powers to crush America, so he can recover the body and ring of his friend. So it's the height of World War II, Green Lantern Sinestro is fighting on the side of the bad guys for the sake of his dead friend, and Green Lantern Captain America is fighting on the other side for an ideal version of a better tomorrow. After the battle, the Guardians would take back Sinestro's ring and kick him out of the Corps, leaving him stranded on Earth, where he'd spend years going on covert missions to find Abin's remains, and to try and take Abin's ring and battery back from Steve Rogers, the man he hates more than any other. Figgy Jones asks, what lantern rings would you give to the characters of My Hero Academia? He then narrowed it down to Izuku Midoriya, Ochako Uraraka, and Tsuyu Asui. Midoriya would be a blue lantern. Being a shonen protagonist, it does of course make sense that he would be a Green Lantern, since he works tirelessly in pursuit of an impossible goal. But what got him there is a solid foundation of hope. My Hero Academia takes place in a society that values superpowers more than anything else, and Midoriya was born without any powers, and yet he still dreamed of being a hero just like the ones he idolized. Even when everyone and everything in the world told him he couldn't do it, he never stopped believing he could. Uraraka would be a Star Sapphire. Everything she does is to help the people she loves. The whole reason she wanted to become a licensed pro hero in the first place is because unlicensed people aren't allowed to openly use their powers in public, and her specific abilities could help her parents' construction company save a lot of money by eliminating the need for expensive machinery. Sue was difficult to figure out, but I think she would be a Green Lantern. She's very bluntly honest and will impulsively say and do whatever she thinks is right in the moment. And since you went out of your way to adjust your question to fit my new guidelines, I'll give you one more as a bonus. Let's talk about one of my favorite characters in the series, Mount Lady. She's about 5 feet tall and has the ability to grow to about 67 feet tall, which is why it's so fitting that her goal is to become one of the biggest pro heroes in terms of overall popularity. She's constantly showing off and stealing the spotlight from other heroes, soaking up all of the fame and glory for herself. So of course, Mount Lady would be an Orange Lantern. But there's a twist. Something I've said in the past is that I would love to see an exploration of what it means to wield an orange ring when the intense sense of wanting that drives you is for the sake of someone else. It's true that Mount Lady cares as much about her own celebrity status as she does about saving people, but that status has another purpose. Remember when I said that she's about 5 feet tall and can grow to about 67 feet tall? Well, those are her only two options. She can't be any height in between those two, and that made things challenging for her when she was a kid. According to the spin-off series My Hero Academia Smash, Mount Lady tried attending a school for heroes, but none of them were set up to accommodate her unique ability, so her education ended up taking place on a farm out in the countryside. She kinda got screwed out of the whole Hero Academy experience, and part of what drives her is the desire to succeed in spite of it. If Mount Lady becomes one of Japan's greatest heroes, it'll raise awareness of abilities like hers, and show kids with similar abilities that things can work out for them. And maybe the schools will even start designing facilities with gigantic students in mind. Don't get me wrong, she loves being the center of attention and will gladly hog the spotlight all day long. But by doing that, she hopes to make things better for a new generation of kids who may have otherwise slipped through the cracks. Now, is the My Hero Academia Smash manga canon? Honestly, no, it probably isn't, but I don't care. It's an official release that added something that makes this character better, so as far as I'm concerned, it counts. And finally, York Lane says, Jeff Johns, along with a lot of big DC names, have announced they're starting a new company, Ghost Machine. Are you planning to read any of their titles, and which ones look the most interesting to you? I think Ghost Machine is a fantastic idea, and it really does remind me of when Image Comics first started back in the 90s. Great things can happen when talented writers and artists are able to do their own thing and retain ownership of their creations. Though I have to be honest, I think the way they're going about this is a little confusing, because they're not just making a line of comics, they're making a series of universes that each contain different series. I guess I shouldn't be surprised since this group of creators have been working for DC and Marvel for decades, but it does feel like kind of a lot all at once. That aside, there are two books that stand out to me. Jeff Johns and Evan Hayes are doing a horror book called Hyde Street that's supposed to blend elements of Blackest Night with the Twilight Zone. Peter J. Tomasi and Francis Manapul are doing a book called The Rockefellers about a family from the far future who time travel to the present because they're in witness protection. Both of these books have fun concepts and top-notch creative teams, and that's more than enough to get me to try them out. I know there are people out there who want to stick to the series and characters they already know, and won't follow, say, Peter J. Tomasi to Ghost Machine despite loving his run on Green Lantern Corps. And to those people I say, there's nothing wrong with having your favorite thing, but there is a lot of value in understanding why you love your favorite thing so much. Something like Green Lantern is an incredible concept, but what makes it shine is what the creators bring to it. By all accounts, working for DC and Marvel is kind of hard, because very few creators have the freedom to just do what they want. They have to work within guidelines that are beyond their control, and they often have to make last-minute changes that threaten to disrupt the entire story they signed on to tell, and yet they still manage to make the occasional masterpiece. Now imagine the heights they could hit without all of those restrictions tying them down. There's no way to know in advance if Ghost Machine will be a success or not, or if these new creator-owned works will live up to the DC and Marvel stories that made these creators famous in the first place. But there is real potential for greatness here, and I'm excited to see what happens. And that's it for another batch of your questions. I think this new format is working out pretty well. If you have a question you'd like answered, leave it in the comment section down below, and I will get to it in a future video. Remember to subscribe if you haven't, so you'll know when the next installment of this Q&A series comes out. Until then, thank you for taking the time to watch. My name is Dan. We'll talk again soon.